I rise to oppose this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that we are on an economic downturn. Our economic is collapsing. Mr. Speaker, today, if we were given this bill and none of us were a member of this honorable House, I can assure you none of us could have passed this bill. I say that, Mr. Speaker, because of few reasons. I'll start with the housing levy, Mr. Speaker. I've just looked at the report and they are telling us they have proposed 1.5, Mr. Speaker. And looking at the report, they are telling us they are going to build 50,000 affordable housing. I would like to ask these honorable members and the chair of this committee, have you given us the timeline of this proposed affordable housing? What is the budget, Mr. Speaker? How many Kenyans are they going to be occupied in these 50,000 houses? Out of the 50 million Kenyans we have, I would like to take an example of a pay slip of a teacher or a police officer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish I came with a pay slip of a teacher. These people are serving so many loans, Mr. Speaker. We are adding for them a housing levy of 1.5. How are they going to pay, Mr. Speaker? Our police officers are dying out of depression because of the loans they are paying. We cannot add for them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say collecting and taxing the citizens is not a bad thing. But it's not the right time for the people to be taxed. It has come the wrong time, Mr. Speaker. It's about our people, the people we represent, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to talk to His Excellency the President. The people who are seated on the other side, Mr. President, are not passing this bill because they want it. They are doing this for you, Mr. President. Mr. Speaker, I want you to protect me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, history will judge us for passing this bill, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will continue by what I was saying, Mr. Speaker. I am here as the county MP for Wajir. I'll speak out my mind and I'll say what I think is right, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm here courtesy of the people of Wajir and I represent Kenyans equally, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to touch on the manufacturing. There is no doubt that the manufacturers are leaving Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Today's paper, we have seen the billionaires are leaving Kenyans. It has come to our attention. Most of us, we need to do something, Mr. Speaker. If you look at M-Pesa, right now the government is spying on our M-Pesa transaction, Mr. Speaker. We cannot even deposit 100,000 on our M-Pesa account because it's taxed, Mr. Speaker. Honorable members, we just need to put our foot down and just think, for heaven's sake, Mr. Speaker.
These frivolous points of order are just meant to waste time so that people cannot hear what we have to say. Mr. Speaker, I talked about things that are in the finance bill. Even the 3% turnover tax is in the finance bill, Mr. Speaker. And I said this, when will this house stand up to be counted? We are being controlled like puppets by the executive, Mr. Speaker. The executive stands and says they are going to watch how we vote. I don't know what will happen to us. Mr. Speaker, members of this house must ensure that the independence and the power of this house is respected so that we don't be taken for a ride. Mr. Speaker, the division of Kenyans by this executive has gone on for a very long time. They started with the issue of hustlers versus dynasties. They talked about companies which have had a leader to here, and shareholders and non-shareholders. Now we've also been told, oh, this bill, there's a fight between those who have salaries and those who do not have salaries. Mr. Speaker, we must make sure that we speak the truth. When you tell us that you want Kenyans to feel pain now. I don't know if they'll go to heaven soon or start enjoying themselves. It reminds me of Shakahola, Mr. Speaker. That is what the people of Shakahola told people. They told them, sell all your earthly assets, come to us, starve and suffer in pain, then die and see heaven. Mr. Speaker, we do not want our hustlers to die. We will speak for them. They are suffering enough, Mr. Speaker. This bill, we cannot allow it to continue hurting them more than that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have had a mention that Kenya is not highly taxed because I think, I don't know, Tunisia, Morocco, they are taxed more. Their tax to GDP is higher. How do you compare Kenya with some of those countries? The average salary in Tunisia is 176,000 a month. Average salary in South Africa is 187,000 a month. Average salary in Morocco is 263,000 shillings a month. The average salary of a Kenyan is 22,000 shillings. How do you compare night and day? Mr. Speaker, let us talk the truth. Mr. Speaker, you know, when I listened to this team when they were speaking during the Kenya Kwanza team during the campaigns, they talked about raising the hustlers. In this finance bill, there is a proposal to tax welfare groups. Welfare groups are those chamas of our women when they put money together, Mr. Speaker, so that they can do table banking. 1,000 shillings each, they put it together, then it is taken by one. Now this team wants to tax that money, take money that these women have worked hard for, the hustler women of this country, the mama mboga, the boda boda. Can you people be fair to Kenyans? Members, let us stand up and oppose this bill, all of us. The voters are watching. The voters are watching. And I can tell you, those two people that you are respecting so much, when you lose the next election, they will not pick your calls. And by that time, even these positions of cabinet, I don't know, CASs, we will have fought them, we will have removed them. They will no longer be there. So members, please, let us vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've had the opportunity to work with President Moi, President Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and right now President William Ruto, Mr. Speaker. And we must all accept that we have a beautiful country called Kenya, Mr. Speaker, which all of us as individuals, as groups, must accept and believe in. Mr. Speaker, the issue of budget making, I know, is emotive, it is difficult, it's painful. And I must say from the onset that as a member of the Finance Committee, we have had the honest task, Mr. Speaker, of going through the different presentations by different groups from different sectors of our economy, Mr. Speaker, in pursuit of both their collective or individual rights, Mr. Speaker, because Kenya is a democracy. Every individual has the right to a divergent view, Mr. Speaker, and that is why in the minds of the framers of the current constitution, Mr. Speaker, the right to public participation is enshrined in the constitution. But Mr. Speaker, having said this, I want each one of us as the leadership, and being the leadership and being in this August House, Mr. Speaker, is a privilege. Because out of the 50 million Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans in their own wisdom have decided to have a few of us here as their representative, Mr. Speaker. And we want to reflect. And I want to ask each one of you a question without venturing into your political persuasion. Where were we in 1963? Where did our forefathers expect us to be? And where are we today? And what is expected each one of us to do so that Kenya joins the League of Developed Nations, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this country has recently been voted as one of the best in human resource capital, meaning therefore outside there, in the eyes of the international community, there are many Kenyans who have gone to school. Our task as the elected representatives is to give them opportunities to get jobs, is to give them opportunities to remove them from that ladder of being underemployed and unemployed, Mr. Speaker. How is this achievable? This is achievable only through taxation, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. Today we expected, and I know we have my friends here, in our democracy we have two sides. Today we expected, what I expected, and this will have guided me, is to get an alternative tax proposals from those who are opposed to what the government is doing. It is not there. We expected to see an alternative budget proposal. We are not seeing it, Mr. Speaker. What is there, Mr. Speaker, is a government elected by the people of Kenya implementing their manifesto, Mr. Speaker. And therefore denying them the right to pursue their manifesto, Mr. Speaker, is an infringement of both their rights as individuals, as government, Mr. Speaker, and even to the people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say this as a member of the Finance Committee, having gone through this, and having said taxation is a painful thing, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the finance bill as it is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you have been around as a person of immense institutional memory, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look at the missed opportunities. This country, because of the fear of the unknown, we have stagnated. We have lost our stature as an economic hub. It's simply because we sit somewhere there. Look at what is happening to the GDP of Ethiopia. Look at what is happening to the GDP of Tanzania. Look at what is happening to the GDP of Uganda. Where do you want to place Kenya, Mr. Speaker? It's because we have persuaded ourselves that it's not us to do the right thing. Somebody else must come. It's our time to say this country requires development, Mr. Speaker. It's our time to say, as members of the 13th Parliament, what the government is proposing, bring the alternative. And let me tell you this for free. What you have been asked to do is to deny the government taxes, misinform the Kenyan public so that your regime becomes unpopular and collapses. Don't accept that truth. This government must function. This government has been elected democratically by the people of Kenya. And therefore, 1 month ago, Mr. Speaker, the salary is delayed. You saw the kind of picketing that was going on. I'm sure in your office, you have had molongos ya watu kuuliza mishahara. Isn't it? Where will the government generate the money from? The government must generate the money from taxations, through this bill. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, what I want to say is this. We have a country. This country must move on. This is the final takeoff for the Republic of Kenya. And please, civility is not cowardice.
Lotte. Okay, give him a minute.
Civility is not cowardice. It's part of our democracy. Let's debate. This is a debating chamber. Let's not shout at each other. And I always say this as a practitioner. Let's debate. The majority will have their way, while the minority will have had their say. And that is the essence of democracy. But this bill, as recommended by the finance bill, I support.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nasimama kuunga mkono, na vile vile nitaanza kwa kusema ya kwamba ni vyema sisi kama wabunge tuweze kujadili masuala ambayo yana umuhimu na taifa hili na wananchi wake. Ikiwa tutaanza kufanya mazungumzo ya kuleta uvumi na fitina, basi hatutakuwa tunasaidia mwananchi wa kawaida. Nikiangalia hii bill, Mheshimiwa Spika, na hili bunge lina wabunge wengi zaidi ya 300, na asilimia kubwa ya wabunge ni wale ambao wako nje, na hawa wabunge wakifika katika majukwaa wanaenda kuchochea wananchi pasi na kuwaambia ukweli. Kuna mbunge wetu kutoka upande wetu ambaye pia ameenda kuchochea wananchi, lakini leo katika bunge hili hayuko hapa kujadili haya masuala ya fedha ili kuwafanya Wakenya waweze kuelewa zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, hili taifa limekuwa taifa la ombaomba tangu Kenya kupata uhuru. Mwaka 1963 Kenya imekuwa ikiongozwa na masuala ya kukopa. Kila mwaka ni kukopa, kulipa wafanyikazi wa serikali, kukopa kuleta maendeleo, na ndio maana sasa imefika mahala ambapo tunataka kusema ya kwamba tutajinyima, tutajizuia na mikopo, tuanze kujifunza kutafuta hela miongoni mwa Wakenya na kujikomboa katika minyororo ya kukopa kila mwaka. Hili taifa hatuwezi kukopa mpaka kiyama. Hili taifa ni lazima tukaze minyororo, tufunge longi yetu vizuri na tuvae njuga, na tuhakikishe ya kwamba tutafanya haya mambo kwa miaka 2 ama 1 hivi, lakini mambo yatakuwa sawa. Mheshimiwa Spika, unataka vipi Kenya hii tujenge barabara wananchi wanataka? Mheshimiwa Spika, unataka vipi sisi leo tuweze kuunganisha umeme? Unataka vipi leo tuweze kupunguza bei ya vyakula ilhali tutaendelea kukopa kwa wazungu ili kuleta matatizo kwa Afrika? Ni lazima tujifunze na kustahimili. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika bunge hili leo, hawa wabunge wenzangu leo wana nguvu kwa sababu wao, kila mbunge kama sijakosea ana nyumba. Mheshimiwa Spika, wacha nizungumzie hili swala la nyumba kwa sababu linachukuliwa vibaya sana. Leo mbunge wa Kenya kila term akiingia anachukua milioni 30 na kununua nyumba. Hawa wabunge wote, mimi pia binafsi na nachukua hiyo pesa na kuhakikisha ya kwamba, Mheshimiwa Spika, nilinde. Mheshimiwa Spika, nilinde na haya maneno naosema. Hawa wabunge tuacheni ubinafsi. Tuacheni ubinafsi kwa mara ya kwanza, tufikirie hawa wananchi. Ni lazima tujinyime, ni lazima tujiadhibu ili tuweze kukomboa hawa wa Kenya. Leo unataka kupinga mswada, leo unataka kupinga bill kwa sababu ya kutafuta umaarufu, siasa za populism. Tunataka siasa za kukomboa taifa hili. Hatuwezi nyima maskini nyumba na wewe unajipatia nyumba kila mwaka.
I see nothing out of order. You will get a chance to say something contrary to what he's saying. That is what debate is all about.
Mheshimiwa Spika, na naomba uniongezee dakika zingine 2 kwa sababu hawa watu wa Azimio wanapenda kupiga kelele mambo mazuri yakitajwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa nazungumzia, angalia katika hii bill, angalia Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwanza inapatia taifa hili uhuru wa kuwapatia nafasi wawekezaji waweze kuja katika taifa hili. Wawekezaji wengi wanaweza kuwekeza katika Nairobi, lakini wamepunguziwa kutoka 37.5 hadi 30% kwa masharti ya waende wawekeze maeneo mengine kama Bungoma, Mombasa, Garissa, sehemu ambazo hazina uwekezaji. Zikiwekezwa basi watoto wetu wanapata kazi, nchi inapata ushuru, nchi inapata nguvu ya kuweza kujikomboa. Angalieni mazuri ndani ya fedha hii. Kwa mfano, hii mambo ya 10% ambayo ina protect local market, ya kuhakikisha ya kwamba tunaenda katika jua kali sekta, tunanunua Kenya, tunanunua Ukenya ndani yetu na kuhakikisha tunainua viwanda vyetu. Angalieni yale mazuri yako ndani ya hii, msiangalie ubinafsi, msiangalie tamaa, msiangalie kuongozwa na viongozi ambao hawana dira ya uongozi. Kila mwaka ni kusumbua, kila mwaka ni kuambia
Time is up.